The thing about humans is that they don't respect tradition. Not in the way the rest of the galaxy does. Anyway, I learned this the hard way during my third rotation as a combat instructor at the Galactic Defense Academy on Praxis Station. My name is Kelvor, and I've trained warriors from 17 different species. Mantic shock troops? Taught them. Baltraxian berserkers? Handled it. But humans? Humans are different. Let me paint you a picture of how this all started. It was a standard morning in Training Hall 7. The metallic walls gleamed under harsh white lights, and the air smelled like disinfectant and nervous sweat. 20 cadets stood in formation, their various appendages, tentacles, and limbs held rigidly at attention. Most of them, anyway. The back row, one cadet slouched. Not dramatically, just enough to be noticeable. Her uniform was regulation, but worn like she'd rather be anywhere else. Dark hair pulled back in a messy knot, eyes that seemed perpetually amused by some private joke. Her name tag read Kira Voss, Human, Earth Sector. Today, I announced, pacing before them with my combat blade held high. We begin advanced melee techniques. This blade has been perfected over 8,000 years of warfare across 40 star systems. Every angle, every grip, every strike has been calculated and recalculated by the finest military minds in known space. I held the knife properly. Blade forward, edge down, thumb along the spine. Textbook. Perfect. This is how you hold a combat knife? I continued. The downward grip provides maximum force on the thrust, optimal control during the slash, and maintains defensive positioning for your primary hand. Any questions? Kira's hand shot up. Yes, Cadet Voss. You're holding it backwards, she said. The hall went silent. You could have heard a pin drop if pins made noise in the vacuum of space, which they don't. But you get my point. I blinked all three of my eyes in sequence. Excuse me. The knife, she said, stepping forward without permission. You're holding it wrong. That's a stabbing grip, sure, but it locks your wrist, limits your angles, and telegraphs every move you're about to make. Plus, if someone grabs your arm, you're done. Can't rotate, can't adjust. My mandibles clicked in irritation. Cadet, this grip has been used successfully in combat for millennia by people who apparently never got into a real knife fight. She replied, "Oh, the audacity. The sheer, breathtaking arrogance. I'll admit, my first instinct was to have her removed from my class. Transferred to sanitation duty on the lower decks where her opinions about combat techniques could be shared with the waste recyclers. But here's the thing about being an instructor for 40 years. You develop instincts. And something in the way she stood, in the casual confidence of her posture, made me pause. Very well, I said, my voice dripping with what humans call sarcasm. Enlighten us, Cadet Voss. Show the class how humanity, which has been in space for barely 2 centuries, has somehow discovered what the rest of us missed. She smiled. Not a smirk, not a grin. A smile that somehow managed to be both friendly and absolutely terrifying. Gladly, sir. She walked to the equipment rack and selected a training blade. Then, right there in front of 20 witnesses, she flipped the knife. Not fumbled, not adjusted. Flipped it with a casual motion that made it look like the most natural thing in the galaxy. She held it with the blade pointing down along her forearm, edge out, grip loose and mobile. Reverse grip, she said simply. Also called ice pick grip back home. But that's a misleading name because it's useful for way more than stabbing. Watch. What happened next, I can only describe as educational humiliation. She moved through a sequence of strikes, slashes, blocks, and redirections that made my 8,000 years of military tradition look like a child's dance recital. The blade sang through the air, never in the same angle twice, flowing from attack to defense, and back again so smoothly that it looked choreographed. See, she said, not even breathing hard. Wrist mobility, unpredictable angles, close quarters advantage. And if someone grabs my knife hand, she demonstrated a rotation that would have broken my grip and put the blade against my throat in one motion. Well, that's their problem, not mine. The other cadets whispered among themselves. A Vorlian in the front row actually took notes that I should have been angry. Should have reasserted my authority, reminded everyone that humans were the newcomers here, the rookies, the species still figuring out which end of a plasma rifle to point at the enemy. Instead, I heard myself say, "Show me that again." She did. Slower this time, breaking down each movement, explaining the biomechanics in terms that translated surprisingly well across species lines. By the end of the session, half the class was practicing her technique. The other half was still skeptical, clinging to tradition like a lifeline. I was somewhere in the middle, which is a deeply uncomfortable place for an instructor to be. As the cadets filed out, Kira lingered. "No offense meant, sir," she said. "Really, where I'm from, you learn to fight with what works, not what looks good in a manual." "And where exactly are you from, cadet?" "Detroit," she said, as if that explained everything. "Rough neighborhood. You adapt or you don't make it home." I didn't know what a Detroit was, but I was starting to suspect it was the kind of place that produced soldiers who questioned 8,000 years of military doctrine before breakfast. "Dismissed," I told her. She saluted and left. I stood alone in the training hall, staring at my combat knife, and slowly, deliberately, I flipped it into reverse grip. It felt wrong. Awkward. Unnatural. It also felt dangerous in ways the textbook grip never had. Humans, I thought. They're going to be a problem. I had no idea how right I was. The incident in Training Hall 7 should have been the end of it. A minor disruption, a teaching moment, maybe a footnote in my long career as an instructor. Log it, move on. Forget about the strange human who thought she knew better than 8 millennia of martial tradition. Except word spread fast. By the next morning, I had 7 messages waiting. 4 from other instructors asking if the rumor was true. 2 from the commandant's office requesting a detailed report. 1 from the Human Liaison Department with a subject line that just read, "We need to talk." I ignored them all and headed to the weapons range for my second class of the day. Advanced firearms training. Surely humans couldn't have opinions about energy weapons that had been standardized across the galaxy for generations, right? Wrong. So very, very wrong. The range was a long corridor with reinforced walls and holographic targets that simulated everything from charging Krell warriors to nimble Sarthan scouts. 15 cadets waited in a line, each holding a standard-issue plasma rifle. Model 7 Bravo. Reliable. Proven. Boring, according to the humans. And yes, there were more of them now. 3 humans in this class. Kira Voss from yesterday, plus 2 others I hadn't met yet. A tall guy named Marcus Webb who looked like he'd been carved from granite, and a shorter woman called Jen Park who kept adjusting her rifle's scope like it personally offended her. Today we focus on proper shooting stance. I began, demonstrating the regulation position. Feet shoulder width apart, weight distributed evenly, rifle tucked firmly against the shoulder, both hands gripping the stock in prescribed positions. This stance has been calculated to provide maximum stability, minimal recoil impact, and optimal target acquisition across 73 different species body types. Marcus raised his hand. "What about cover?" "Cover? Yeah. When do we learn to shoot from behind cover? Because that stance makes you a pretty big target." I felt my neck plates flare in annoyance. Cadet Webb, modern combat shields and armor make cover largely obsolete. The stance prioritizes accuracy over protection because protection is handled by your equipment. Right, he said, nodding slowly. Except shields fail. Armor gets breached. And when that happens, standing there like you're posing for a portrait seems like a bad call. Jen snorted. Actually snorted. In my class. Something amusing, Cadet Park. "Sorry, sir," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "It's just that Marcus has a point. Back on Earth, we have this saying. Stay exposed, stay dead. First thing they teach you in urban warfare." Urban warfare. That phrase again. Humans talked about urban warfare the way other species discussed philosophy or art, like it was some foundational aspect of their culture. "This is not Earth," I said carefully. "This is modern galactic combat. We have technology your homeworld can only dream about." "Had," Kira interjected. "Technology you had." Past tense. Because someone figured out how to punch through shields 3 cycles ago, and now half the fleet is retrofitting for fights where armor might not save you. She wasn't wrong. There had been incidents. Reports of new weapons, new tactics. Things were changing. I hated that she wasn't wrong. "Fine," I said, my patience wearing thinner than hull plating on an old freighter. "Cadet Webb, show us your human approach to shooting. Enlighten us all." He grinned. Then he did something I'd never seen in 40 years of instruction. He dropped low, angled his body behind an equipment crate, and positioned the rifle with his shoulder barely exposed. His stance was compact, mobile, ready to move in any direction at a split second's notice. "Shoot from cover whenever possible," he said. "Keep your profile small. Stay mobile. If you're standing out in the open taking careful aim, you're already dead. You just don't know it yet." Then he fired 6 shots in rapid succession, each one hitting a different target center mass. The plasma bolts screamed downrange with precision that exceeded what the regulation stance typically produced. He moved between shots. Duck, shift, angle, fire. Never in the same position twice. Never presenting the same target profile. It was chaos. It was undisciplined. It was completely contrary to everything in the manual. It was also brutally effective. The other cadets stared. A few looked scandalized. Others looked thoughtful. A Draxian cadet actually started mimicking the movement, her forearms giving her even more flexibility than the human had demonstrated. In regulated combat scenarios, I tried to explain, with proper support and coordination, the standard stance allows for, "Sir?" Jen interrupted. "When was the last time combat was regulated? Like, actually followed the rules everyone agreed on?" I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. The truth was never. Combat never followed rules. It was messy, unpredictable, violent, and wrong. That's why we trained for ideal conditions, so cadets would have something to fall back on when everything went sideways. Except these humans seemed to train for everything to go sideways from the start. "Tell you what," Marcus said, lowering his rifle. "Let me run the course your way first. Then my way. We can compare times and accuracy." Fair. It wasn't fair. It was a trap. But I was too curious and too stubborn to back down now. Agreed. He ran the course in regulation stance. Did well. Scored 87% accuracy with a time of 42 seconds. Perfectly respectable. Then he ran it again using his mobile, cover-based approach. 94% accuracy. 31 seconds. The scoreboard didn't lie. Neither did the shocked silence that followed. "How?" I finally asked. Kira stepped forward. "Because humans don't train for the ideal fight, sir. We train for the fight where everything's broken, half your equipment doesn't work, and the enemy isn't following anyone's playbook. We train for Murphy's Law." Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong, she explained. So you prepare for wrong. You make wrong your starting point. That way, when things get bad, you're already comfortable there. I looked at my 3 human cadets. Behind them, the other 12 were watching this exchange with fascination. Humans had been in galactic space for less than 200 years. They had the least advanced technology, the smallest fleet, the newest tactical databases. By every measure, they should have been the students, the ones learning from species who had fought wars before Earth even developed agriculture. Instead, they were teaching us. And the terrifying part? We needed the lessons. "Class dismissed," I said quietly. "Except you 3. Humans. You stay." They exchanged glances but remained as the others filed out. "I need you to understand something," I told them once we were alone. "What you're doing, challenging established doctrine, questioning protocols, it makes people nervous. People in power. People who don't like change." "We know," Kira said. "Trust me, we know." "But," I prompted. Marcus shrugged. "But people being nervous doesn't make us wrong, sir. And if this place is training soldiers to fight and die using techniques that don't work, then someone needs to say something. Even if it costs you. Especially then." Jin added softly. I studied them for a long moment. Young, idealistic, absolutely convinced they were right. The kind of conviction that either changed the world or got you killed. Sometimes both. "Report to Training Hall 3 tomorrow at 0600, I said. "Bring your ideas. All of them. Because if I'm going to get disciplined for letting humans revolutionize our combat training, I might as well make it worth the trouble." They saluted. Properly this time, with genuine respect behind it. After they left, I stood alone in the empty range and wondered what I'd just started. Outside, through the reinforced windows, I could see Praxis Station orbiting a pale blue planet. Peaceful. Quiet. Routine. It wouldn't stay that way. Change was coming. And it was being delivered by the galaxy's newest, most stubborn, most annoyingly effective species, humans. The meeting at 0600 never happened. Because at 0430, the alarm started screaming. I was halfway through my morning routine, contemplating my life choices, and wondering how to explain to the commandant why I was essentially letting humans rewrite our training curriculum. When every light in my quarters turned red and the emergency klaxon began its ear-splitting wail. All personnel to battle stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Unknown hostile force has breached station perimeter. All combat instructors report to forward sections immediately. I grabbed my gear and ran. The corridors were chaos, controlled chaos, but chaos nonetheless. Cadets rushing to designated safe zones, security teams mobilizing, instructors like myself heading toward the sounds of weapons fire that were getting progressively closer. Station Commander Threll was coordinating from the command deck, his voice coming through on all channels. Unidentified vessels. Raiders, we think. They punched through our shields using some kind of new frequency modulator. Security teams are engaged, but they're pressing hard toward the training sections. Of course they were. Training sections meant cadets. Young, inexperienced cadets who would make excellent hostages or, worse, recruits for whatever criminal operation was desperate enough to attack a Galactic Defense Academy station. That I reached forward section 6, just as a plasma bolt took out the wall panel next to my head. 3 raiders, heavily armored, advancing down the corridor with the kind of confidence that comes from thinking you've already won. Our security team was pinned down behind portable barriers, returning fire, but losing ground. Standard defensive positions, textbook responses, everything by the manual. They were going to die by the manual too. Then I heard a voice that shouldn't have been there. Sir. Left flank, moving to engage. Kira Voss rolled out from a side passage, plasma rifle held in a grip I'd never seen taught, firing from a crouch while moving laterally. The raiders turned to track her, but she was already somewhere else, popping up from behind a maintenance conduit, taking out one's shoulder joint where the armor was weakest. Marcus appeared on the opposite side, using the irregular corridor walls as cover, each shot calculated and brutal. No wasted movement. No hesitation. Jin was higher up, somehow having climbed into the maintenance overhead, her rifle's scope modified on the fly, taking shots from an angle the raiders never thought to defend against. They moved like water. Like chaos given purpose. Like nothing I'd ever seen in regulation combat. And it was working. The raiders fell back, confused, unable to predict where the next shot would come from. Their formation broke. Their confidence shattered. All units, converge on their position. I shouted into my comm, humans have them disrupted. Press the advantage now. Our security forces moved in. With the raiders disorganized, it became a rout rather than a fight. Within 3 minutes, all hostiles in the section were down or surrendering. Silence fell, broken only by heavy breathing and the crackle of cooling plasma weapons. Kira lowered her rifle and looked at me with that same infuriating smile from yesterday. So, still think the textbook grip is optimal, sir? I couldn't help it. I laughed. A deep, wheezing laugh that hurt my respiratory system but felt absolutely necessary. You 3 were supposed to be in the safe zones, I said when I could breathe again. Yeah, well, Marcus replied, checking his rifle's charge pack. We're not great with supposed to. Clearly. Station Commander Threll's voice came through again. Forward section secured. Raiders are retreating to their ships. Someone want to tell me how a bunch of first-year cadets just held off a trained assault team? I activated my comm, sir. This is Instructor Kelvor. I can explain. It's going to sound insane, but I can explain. Save it for the debrief. Just tell me if we're going to have more surprises like this. I looked at my 3 human cadets, then at the growing crowd of other cadets who had witnessed the fight, their expressions ranging from shock to awe to fierce determination. Sir, I said slowly, I think we're going to have a lot more surprises. And I think that's exactly what we need. The debrief lasted 6 hours. Every instructor, every department head, the commandant herself, all crammed into conference room Alpha watching tactical footage of the engagement over and over again. Watching humans fight the way humans fight. There were objections, naturally. Tradition, protocols, the argument that lucky improvisation shouldn't replace proven doctrine. But the footage didn't lie. Neither did the casualty reports. 0 friendly losses in sections where humans had engaged. 12% casualties in sections that fought conventionally. Numbers have a way of ending arguments. By hour 5. We weren't debating whether to listen to the humans. We were debating how fast we could integrate their methods into standard training. The commandant, A dignified Voltraxian with more combat ribbons than I had years of service, stood and addressed the room. For 8,000 years, we have trained warriors the same way. The safe way. The proven way. The way that minimizes risk and maximizes predictability. She paused, her 6 eyes scanning each face. Today, I learned that safe and effective are not always the same thing. Instructor Kelvor. I stood. Ma'am, your proposal to expand human tactical integration into our curriculum. It's approved. Full authority. Whatever resources you need. I want every cadet, every species, trained in adaptive combat by end of cycle. Make it happen. Yes, ma'am. She looked directly at Kira, Marcus, and Jen, who stood at attention in the corner. You 3. Congratulations. You're no longer cadets. As of now, you're provisional instructors. Assistant rank. You'll be working directly with Kelvor to redesign our combat training programs. Kira's eyes went wide. Ma'am, we've only been here 3 months. Then you have a lot of catching up to do. Dismissed. We filed out into the corridor. The station was returning to normal operations, repair crews fixing the damage, life moving on. This is insane, Jen muttered. We're barely past basic training ourselves. Welcome to humanity's effect on the galaxy, I told her. Everything we touch turns a little bit insane. You'll get used to it. Marcus grinned. So what now, sir? I thought about tradition and change, about 8,000 years of doing things one way and the terrifying, exhilarating prospect of trying something new. Now, I said, now we teach them everything you know. Every dirty trick, every improvised technique, every lesson you learned in your Detroit neighborhoods, and urban warfare and Murphy's Law planning. We take 40 species worth of warriors and we make them think like humans. That's either brilliant or it's going to blow up spectacularly, Kira observed. Probably both, I agreed. But after today, I'll take messy and alive over proper and dead. 6 months later, the Galactic Defense Academy published a new combat manual. It was twice as long as the old one, filled with conditional responses, adaptive techniques, and an entire chapter titled, When Everything Goes Wrong. The introduction was written by a human. It read simply, there is no perfect fight. There is no ideal engagement. There is only what works when nothing else does. Train for chaos. Embrace adaptation. Stay alive. Across the galaxy, military academies began requesting human instructors. Tactical databases were rewritten. Entire doctrines were questioned and revised. And in Training Hall 7, I taught my classes with a knife in reverse grip, showing cadets from a dozen worlds how to move like water, think like chaos, and fight like humans. The thing about humans is that they don't respect tradition. Not in the way the rest of us do, and thank the stars for that. Because when the next war came, and it always does, we were ready. Ready in ways we never would have been if we'd kept doing things the safe way, the proper way, the way we'd always done them. Sometimes the newest species in the galaxy teaches the oldest ones the most important lesson of all. Sometimes you have to flip everything backwards to see it clearly. And sometimes, just sometimes, a human shows up and casually mentions that you've been holding your knife wrong for 8,000 years, that I wouldn't have it any other way. So what did you think? Did this story surprise you? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this sci-fi story, please hit the like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe for more mind-blowing science fiction stories every week. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.